Hey guys, this is chapter 4 of The Outsiders. Now, when we last left our heroes, our main character of Johnny just got into a fight and with his older brother Daryl. He stayed out past curfew. Daryl was obviously very worried, started screaming at him, and when push came to shove, suddenly Daryl had smacked Johnny in the face, or not Johnny, Ponyboy in the face, and then Ponyboy now ran off into the night. He grabbed Johnny, and now they are off into the night, pretty much running away together. The park was about 2 blocks square with a fountain in the middle and a small swimming pool for the little kids. The pool was empty now in the fall, but the fountain was going merrily. Tall elm trees made the park shadowy and dark, and it would have been a very good hangout, but we preferred our vacant lot. And the shepherd's outfit liked the alleys down by the tracks, so the park was left for lovers and little kids. Nobody was around at 2:30 in the morning, and it was a good place to relax and cool off. I couldn't have gotten much cooler without turning into a popsicle, personally. Johnny snapped up his jean jacket and flipped up the collar. "Ain't you about to freeze to death, Pony?" "You ain't a wolfin'," I said, rubbing my bare arms and taking another drag of my cigarette. I started to say something about the film of ice developing of the outer edges of the fountain when a sudden blast from a car horn made us both jump. It was a blue Mustang, and it was circling the park slowly. Johnny swore under his breath, and I muttered, "What do they want? This is our territory. What's Soch doing this far east?" Johnny shook his head. "I don't know, but I bet they're looking for us. I mean, we picked up their girls." "Ah, glory," I said with a groan. "This is all I need to top off the perfect night." I took one last drag of my weed and I ground the stub under my heel. "You want to try to make a run for it?" "It's too late now," Johnny said. "Here they come." 5 Soch were coming right at us, and from the way they were staggering, I figured that they were reeling pickled. And that scared me. A cool, deadly bluff could sometimes shake them off, but not if they outnumbered you 5-2 and were drunk. Johnny's hand went to his back pocket, and I remembered his switchblade. I wished for that broken bottle. I sure showed them how I could use it if I had to. But I looked at Johnny, and he was clearly scared to death. And I mean it. He was as white as a ghost, and his eyes were wild-looking, like his eyes of an animal in a trap. We backed against the fountain, and the Soch began to surround us. They smelled so heavily of whiskey and English leather that I almost choked. I wished desperately that Derry and Soda could come along, hunting for me, and maybe stumble upon us. The 4 of us could easily handle them. But there was no one else around, and I knew Johnny and I were going to have to fight it out alone. Johnny had a blank look on his face. You would have had one to know him. You'd have to know him, though, to see the panic in his eyes. I stared at those Soch coolly. Maybe they could scare us to death, but we'd never let them have the satisfaction of knowing it. It was Randy and Bob and the 3 other Soches, and they recognized us. I knew Johnny recognized them, too. He was watching the moonlight glint of Bob's rings with his huge eyes. "Hey, what do you know?" Bob said, a little unsteadily. "Here's those greasers that picked up our girls." "Hey, greasers!" You're out of your territory," Johnny warned in a low voice. "You better watch it." Randy swore at us, and they stepped closer. Bob was eyeing Johnny. "Nut, pal. You're the ones who better watch it. Next time you want a broad, you better pick up your own kind. And dirt." I was getting mad. I was hating them enough to lose my head. "You know what a greaser is?" Bob asked. "It's white trash with long hair." I felt the blood draining from my face. I've been cussed at and sworn at, but nothing ever hit me like that did. Johnny Cake made a kind of gasp, and his eyes were smoldering. "You know what a Soch is?" I said, my voice shaking with rage. "It's white trash with Mustangs and Madras." And then, because I couldn't think of anything bad enough to call them, I spit right on him. Bob just shook his head, smiling slowly. "You could use a bath, greaser, and a good working over. And we've got all night to do it. Let's give those kids a bath, shall we, David?" I ducked and I tried to run for it, but the Soch caught my arm and twisted it behind my back and shoved my face into the fountain. I fought, but the hand on the back of my neck was strong and I had to hold my breath. I'm dying, I thought, and I wondered what was happening to Johnny. I couldn't hold my breath any longer. I thought desperately, but I only could suck in water. Oh my gosh, I'm drowning. They're actually drowning me. I thought they've gone too far. A red haze began to fill my mind, and suddenly, I slowly relaxed. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the pavement beside the fountain, coughing water and gasping. I lay there weakly, breathing in air and spitting out water. The wind blasted through my soaked sweatshirt and dripping hair. My teeth chattered unceasingly, and I couldn't stop them. I finally pushed myself up, leaned against the fountain, and the water running down my face. And then I saw Johnny. He was sitting next to me, one elbow on his knee, and he was staring right ahead. He was a strange greenish white, and his eyes were huger than I'd ever seen them. I killed him, he said slowly. I killed that boy. Bob, the handsome Soch, was lying on the moonlight. He was doubled up, and he was still. There was a dark pool that was growing from him, spreading slowly over the blue light cement. I looked at Johnny's hand. He was clutching his switchblade, and it was dark red to the hilt. My stomach gave a violent jump. My blood turned icy. Johnny! I managed to say, fighting dizziness. I think I'm going to be sick. Go ahead, came him in a steady voice. I'm not going to look at you. I turned my head and was quietly sick for a minute. Then I leaned back and I closed my eyes so I wouldn't see Bob lying there. This couldn't be happening. This can't be happening. This can't be. You really killed him, huh, Johnny? Yeah. His voice was quavering slightly. I had to. They were drowning you, Pony. They might have killed you, and they had a blade. They were going to beat me up, and... I swallowed. Oh my, like they did before, huh? Johnny was quiet a minute. Yeah, like they did before. Johnny told me what had happened. They ran when I stabbed them. They all ran away. A panic was rising in me as I listened to Johnny's quiet voice go on and on. Johnny! I nearly screamed. What are we going to do? They put you in the electric chair for killing people. I was shaking. I want a cigarette. I want a cigarette. I want a cigarette. Oh my goodness, we had smoked our last pack though. What were we thinking? Oh gosh, I'm scared, Johnny. What are we going to do? Johnny jumped up and dragged me up by my sweatshirt. He shook me. Calm down, Pony Boy. Get a hold of yourself. I hadn't realized I was screaming. I shook loose. Okay. I'm okay now. Johnny looked around, slapping his pockets nervously. We gotta get out of here. Get somewhere. We gotta run away. The police are gonna be here soon. I was trembling, and it wasn't all from the cold, but Johnny, except for the fact that his hands were twitching, looked as cold as Derry ever had. We'll need money and maybe a gun, and we need a plan, too. Money, maybe a gun, a plan? Where in the world will we get all those things? Dally, Johnny said with finality. Dally will be able to get us out of here. I heaved a sigh. Why hadn't I thought of that? But I never thought of anything. Dallas Winston could do anything, though. Where are we going to find him? I think at Buck Merle's place. There's a party over there. Dally said something about this afternoon. Buck Merle was Dally's rodeo partner. He was the one who'd got Dally the job as a jockey for the Slash J Buck and raised a few quarter horses, and made most of the money on fixed races and a little bootlegging. I was under strict orders from Derry and Soda not to go get caught within 10 miles of Bud's place, which was dandy with me. See, I didn't like Bud Merle. He was a tall, lanky cowboy and a blonde hair and buck teeth. Or he used to be bucktooth before he had those front two teeth kicked out in a fight. He was out of it. He dug Hank Williams. How gross can you get? Buck answered the door when we knocked, though, and a roar of cheap music came from him. The clinking of glasses was loud, and rough laughter and female giggles came from inside, too. And, of course, Hank Williams. It scraped my raw nerves like sandpaper. A can of beer was in Buck's hand, and he glared down at us. What do you guys want? Dally! Johnny gulped, looking back over his shoulder. We got to see Dally. He's busy. Buck snapped, and someone in his living room yelled, "Aha!" And then, "Yeehaw!" And then there was a sound that almost made my nerves snap. Tell him it's Pony and Johnny," I commanded. I knew Buck, and the only way you could get him to do anything was to bully him. I guess that's why Dallas could handle him so easily, although Buck was in his mid-20s and Dally was just 17. "He'll come." Buck glared at me for a second, and then he stumbled off. He was pretty well crocked, which made me apprehensive. If Dally was drunk and in a dangerous mood, who knows what he would do to us. Dally appeared, though, in a few minutes, clad only in a pair of low-cut blue jeans, scratched the hair of his chest. He was sober enough, and that surprised me. Maybe he hadn't been there long. "All right, kids, what do you need from me?" As Johnny told him the story, I studied Dally, trying to figure out what there was about that tough-looking hood that a girl like Cherry Valance could love. Tow-headed and shifty-eyed, Dally was anything but handsome. Yet in his hard face there was character, pride, and a savage defiance to the world. He could never love a Cherry Valance back. It would be a miracle if Dally ever loved anyone. The fight for self-preservation had hardened him beyond caring. He didn't bat an eye when Johnny told him what had happened either. He only grinned and said, "Good for you," when Johnny told him how he knifed a Soch. Finally, Johnny finished, "We figured that maybe you could get us out of this if anyone could. I'm sorry we had to get you away from your party." "Ah, shoot, kid!" Dally glanced contemptuously over his shoulder. "I was in the bedroom anyway, already going to sleep." He suddenly stared at me. "Glory, but your ears can't get red, pony boy." I was remembering what usually went on in the bedrooms at Buck's parties. Then Dally grinned in an amused realization at what I was thinking. "It wasn't anything like that, kid. I was asleep, or at least trying to be, with all this racket, this Hank Williams." He rolled his eyes and added a few adjectives after Hank Williams. "Me and Shepard had a run-in, and I cracked some ribs, and I just needed a place to lay over." He rubbed his head, sigh ruefully. "Old Tim sure can pack a punch. He won't be able to see out of one eye, though, for a week." He looked us over and sighed. "Well, wait a sec. I'll see what I can do about this mess." Then he took a good look at me. "Pony boy, are you wet?" Yes," I stammered, though chattering teeth. "Glory, hallelujah." He opened the screen door and pulled me in, motioning for Johnny to follow. "You're going to die of pneumonia before the cops are even going to be able to catch you." He half dragged me into the empty bedroom, swearing at me all the way. "Get that sweatshirt off." He threw a towel at me. "Dry off and wait here." At least Johnny's got his jean jacket. You ought to know better than to run away in just a sweatshirt, and a wet one at that. Don't you ever use your head? He started to sound like Derry, and I stared at him. He didn't notice, and he left us sitting on the bed. Johnny laid back in on us. "I wish I had me some weed." My knees were shaking as I finished drying off, sitting there in my jeans. Dally appeared after a minute. He carefully shut the door. "Here." He handed us a gun and a roll of bills. "The gun's loaded, for Pete's sakes, Johnny, so don't point that thing at me. Here's $50. That's all I could get out of Merrill tonight. He's blowing his loot from that last race. You might have thought it was Dally who fixed those races, but Buck being a jockey and all, but it wasn't. The last guy to suggest it was lost 3 teeth, too. It's the truth. Dally rode the ponies honestly, and he did his best to win every single time. It was the only thing Dally ever did in his life that was honest. Pony, do Derry and Soda Pop know about all this? I shook my head, and Dally sighed. Oh, boy, howdy. I ain't itchy to be the one to tell Derry and get my head busted in. Well, then you don't have to tell him, I said. I hated the word Soda Pop, and I would have liked to let him know I had gotten far okay, but I didn't care if Derry worried himself gray-headed. I was too tired to tell myself I was being mean and unreasonable. I convinced myself it wouldn't be fair to make Dally tell him. Derry would beat him to death for giving us the money and the gun and getting us out of town. Here! Dally handed me a shirt and 60 million that was about 60 million sizes too big. It's Buck's. You and him ain't exactly the same size or anything, but at least it's dry. He handed me his worn brown leather jacket, the yellow sheep's wool lining. It'll get cold where you're going, but you can't risk being loaded down with blankets. I started buttoning up the shirt. It was about swallowed me whole. What you guys are going to do is you're going to hop on the 315 weight to Windrixville, Dally instructed. There's an old abandoned church on top of Jay Mountain. There's a pump in the back, so don't worry about water. You're going to go there, and as soon as you arrive, you're going to buy a week's supply of food as soon as you get there this morning, before the story gets out. And then, don't so much as stick your noses out of the door. I'll be up there as soon as I think it's clear. Man, I thought New York would be the only place I could get mixed up with something like a murder rat. At the word murder, Johnny suddenly made a small noise in his throat. And he shuddered. Dally walked us back to the door, turned to the porch light before he stepped out. Now get going. He messed up Johnny's hair. All right, you take care, kid, he said softly. Yeah, sure, thanks, Dally. And with that, we ran into the darkness. I did want to stop just for a second here, guys, because this is a pretty big moment. This is what we call in a plot the inciting incident. Now, in our last book that we read, there really wasn't an inciting incident because there really wasn't a huge conflict. But inciting incidents when a conflict is introduced in the story. This book very clearly is like the opposite of the last book because this book clearly has a plot. And this is the inciting incident. This is the big conflict of the story. Johnny has murdered Bob. We talked on the discussion walls, is murder ever justified? And I want you guys to ask right now, was Johnny justified in his murder? A lot of you guys said no, murder is never justified. So was Johnny in the wrong for killing him? Can you sympathize with Johnny for the fact that he killed Bob? Also, think to yourself, why did he kill Bob? Let's continue. We crouched in the weeds beside the railroad tracks, listening for the white grow louder. The train shoved to a screaming halt. Now, whispered Johnny, and we ran and pulled ourselves into the open boxcar. We pressed against the side, trying to hold our breath while we listened to the railroad workers walk up and down outside. One poked his head inside and we froze. But he didn't see us, and the boxcar rattled as the train started up. The first stop will be Windrixville, Johnny said, laying the gun down gingerly. He shook his head. I don't see why he gave me this. I could never shoot anybody. And then for the first time, really, I realized what we were in for. Johnny had killed someone. Murdered. Quiet, soft-spoken little Johnny, who couldn't hurt a little thing ever on purpose, had taken away a human life. We were on the run for murder, with police after us for murder, and we had a loaded gun by our side. I wish we'd asked Dally for a pack of cigarettes, too. I stretched out and I used Johnny's legs for a pillow. Curling up, I thanked Dally. I was very thankful at that moment for the jacket Dally gave me. It was too big, but gosh, was it warm. Not even the rattling of the train could keep me awake, and I went to sleep in a hoodwin's jacket with a gun lying next to my hand. I was hardly awake when Johnny and I leaped off that train into the meadow. Not until I landed in the dew and got wet, shocked, did I realize what I was doing. Johnny must have woke me up and told me to jump, and I didn't remember it. We lay in those tall weeds in the dumb grass, breathing heavily. The dawn was coming. It was lighting the sky to the east. An array of gold touched the hills. The clouds were pink and meadow larks were singing. This is the country, I thought, half asleep. My dreams come true, and I'm in the country. Blast it, pony boy! Johnny was rubbing his legs. You must have put my whole legs to sleep. I can't even stand up. I barely got off that train. I'm sorry. Why didn't you wake me up? That's okay. I didn't want to wake you up until I had to. Well, now how do we find Jay Mountain? I asked Johnny. I was still a little groggy with sleep, and I wanted to sleep forever right there in the dew and the dawn. We gotta ask someone. The story won't be in the paper yet. We gotta make like a farm boy taking a walk or something. I don't look like no farm boy, I said. And I suddenly thought of my long hair combed back and the slouching stride I used for like a habit. I looked at Johnny. He didn't look like any farm boy to me either. He still reminded me of a lost puppy who had been kicked too often. But for the first time, I saw him as a stranger might see him. He looked hard and tough because of his black t-shirt and his blue jeans and jacket, and because his hair was heavily greased and so long. I saw how his hair curled like that beyond his ears, and I thought, we both need a haircut, and we need some decent clothes. I looked down at my worn, faded blue jeans that were in my too big shirt, Dally's worn-out jacket. They'll know we're hoods the minute they see us, I thought. I have to stay here, Johnny said, rubbing his legs. You go down the road and ask the first person you see where Jay Mountain is. He winced at the pain in his legs. Then come back and for Pete's sakes, run a comb through your hair and quit slouching like a thug. So Johnny had noticed it too, huh? I pulled a comb from my back pocket and I combed my hair carefully. I guess I look okay now, huh, Johnny? He was studying me. You know, you look an awful lot like Soda Pop, the way you got your hair and everything, I mean, except your eyes are green. They ain't green, they're gray, I said, reddening. And I look as much like Soda as you do. I got to my feet. After all, he's good looking. Shoot, Johnny said with a grin. You are too, man. I climbed over the barbed wire fence without saying anything else. I could hear Johnny laughing at me, but I didn't care. I went strolling through the red dirt road, hoping my natural color would come back before I met anyone. I wonder what Derry and Soda Pop were doing now, I thought, yawning. Soda had the whole bed to himself for once. I bet Derry's sorry he ever hit me. He really got worried, and he'll get worried when he finds out Johnny and I killed that Soch. And then for a moment, I pictured Soda Pop's face when he heard about it. Gosh, I wish I was home, I thought absently. I wish I was home, and I wish I was still in bed. Maybe I am, I thought. Maybe this was all just a dream. It was only last night, after all, that Dally and I had sat down behind those girls at the nightly double. Glory, I thought, with a bewildering feeling of being rushed. Things are happening too quick, too fast. I figured I couldn't get into any worse trouble than murder, though. Johnny and I would be hiding for the rest of our lives. Nobody but Dally would know where we were, and we couldn't exactly tell anyone because we'd get jailed for giving up that gun. If Johnny got caught, they'd give him the electric chair, and if they caught me, well, I would be sent to a reformatory. I heard about reformatories from Curly Shepherd, and I didn't really want to go to one at all. So we'd have to be hermits for the rest of our lives, and we'd never see anyone but Dally. Maybe I'd never see Derry or Soda Pop again either, or ever even see Two-Bit or Steve. I was in the country, but I knew I wasn't going to like it as much as I thought I would. There are things worse than being a greaser, after all. I met a sunburned farmer driving a tractor down the road, and I waved at him, and he stopped. Hey, could you tell me where Jay Mountain is? I asked, as politely as I could. He pointed on towards the road. Follow the road up to the big hill over there. That's it. Take a walk. Yes, sir, I managed, and I looked sheepish. Yeah, we're playing Army, and I'm supposed to report to headquarters there. I can laugh so easily that it kind of spooks me sometimes. Soda says it comes from reading so much. But then Two-Bit lies all the time, too, and he never opens a book. Boys will be boys, the farmer said with a grin. And I thought dully that he sounded as corn pony as Hank Williams. He went on, and I walked back to where Johnny was waiting. We climbed up the road to the church, though it was a lot further away than it looked. The road got steeper with every step, and I was kind of feeling drunk. I always do when I get sleepy, and my legs got heavier and heavier. I guess Johnny was sleepier than I was, though. He had stayed awake on the train to make sure that we got off the right place. It took us about 45 minutes to get there. We climbed in a back window. It was a small church, a real old and spooky and spiderwebby. It gave me the creeps. I'd been in church before. I used to go all the time, even after Mom and Dad were gone. And then one Sunday, I talked Soda into coming with Johnny and me. He didn't want to come unless Steve did, and Two-Bit decided he might as well come too. Dally was sleeping over off a hangover, and Derry was working. When Johnny and I went, we sat in the back, trying to get something out of the sermon and avoiding the people, because we weren't dressed so sharp most of the time. Nobody seemed to mind, and Johnny and I really liked to go. But that day, well, Soda can't sit for long and enjoy a movie, much less a sermon. It wasn't long before he and Steve and Two-Bit were throwing paper wads at each other and clowning around, and finally Steve dropped a hymn book with a bang, accidentally, of course. Everybody in the place turned around to look at us, and Johnny and I nearly crawled under the pews. And then Two-Bit waved at all of them awkwardly. Hi, everybody! I hadn't been to church since. But this church gave me kind of a creepy feeling. What do you call it, premonition? I flopped down on that floor and immediately decided not to do any more flopping. That floor was stone. Johnny stretched out beside me, resting his head on his arm. I started to say something to him, but I went to sleep before I could get out the words out of my mouth. But Johnny didn't notice, because he was asleep too. And that's all for today, folks. What do you guys think is going to happen next? Do you think they're truly never going to see anybody again? Do you think they're going to get away with it? What do you guys think is going to happen? I hope everyone has a great weekend and everybody stays safe and takes care. Bye-bye.